13-year-old girl walked out of her house in 1994 and vanished. For 32 years, investigators believed she had been taken, that something had happened on that road, that somewhere in the mountains of Arizona, a child had met something she could not walk away from. They were wrong. In 2026, they found her, alive, 44 years old, living a life that nobody knew existed. And what she told them made a veteran detective, a man who had worked missing persons cases long enough to believe nothing could surprise him anymore, use one single word: dumbfounded. This is the story of where Christina Plante was for 32 years, and why for every single one of those years, nobody knew. Today we are going to Star Valley, Arizona. We are going to walk the road Christina walked on the 15th of May, 1994. We are going to sit with 32 years of assumptions, and we are going to watch every single one of them shatter. Star Valley, Arizona. Small, quiet, tucked into the mountains of Gila County northeast of Phoenix, where the landscape shifts from open desert into pine trees and cooler air and roads that wind through forested hillsides with no particular urgency. The kind of place where nothing is supposed to happen, which makes what happened here almost impossible to explain. Christina Marie Plante was 13 years old in May of 1994. Blue eyes, dark blonde hair, a kid who had a horse, which tells you something about her world, about the rural, outdoor life she was living in those mountains. She was not dreaming of somewhere else. She was not restless in the way that some children are restless. Or at least that is what everyone assumed. That assumption would hold for 32 years. She was last seen on the 15th of May, 1994, around 12:30 in the afternoon. She left her home on foot, told whoever was nearby that she was heading to the stable down the road where her horse was kept. A short walk, a familiar route, the kind of errand a kid does 100 times without anyone worrying. Nobody worried, until she did not come back. The searches began immediately. Local law enforcement, volunteers, regional resources combing the area around Star Valley looking for any sign, clothing, footprints, anything that could point in a direction. They found nothing. And in missing persons investigations, finding nothing is never actually nothing. It is a message. It just takes years to understand what it is saying. Investigators classified the case as missing and endangered under suspicious circumstances, not a runaway, not a voluntary departure, suspicious. The kind of classification that says something is wrong here, something that we cannot name yet, but that we can feel in the evidence. What made them suspicious has never been fully detailed publicly, but they chose that word deliberately. And that word suspicious would shape every assumption investigators carried for the next 3 decades. Christina's face was entered into national missing children databases. Flyers were distributed across the state and beyond. Searches were conducted, and then conducted again, when new volunteers came forward. The case went cold, not closed cold, pulled out periodically when a new investigator had a new idea or new technology made old evidence worth looking at again. Each time back in the file. Each time nothing. Meanwhile, somewhere in the world, Christina Plante was living. Nobody knew where. Nobody knew how. Nobody knew who she had become in the years since she walked away from that stable road and kept walking. That is the part that 32 years of investigation never touched. Not because investigators were not trying, because she did not want to be found. Then in the months leading into 2026, a detective named Garrett, working the Gila County cold case unit, pulled Christina's file again. He had a thread. Not dramatic. Not a witness coming forward after decades of guilt. Something quieter. The kind of lead that cold case detectives describe as thin until suddenly it isn't. He identified an adult woman he believed could be Christina Plante. He reached out. She responded. And what she said next stopped him completely. Here, right here. Before we go any further, I need you to do something. Drop your theory in the comments right now, before you hear the answer. What do you think Christina told that detective? What do you think happened on that road in May of 1994? What explanation could make a veteran investigator, a man who had worked cold cases long enough to expect almost anything, describe himself as completely dumbfounded? Write it below, because in 60 seconds, You are going to find out if you were right. And that moment, that gap between what you expected and what actually happened, is exactly what this channel exists to create. Please, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that notification bell, because this case broke 4 weeks ago, and there is still more coming. When it does, you need to be here. Christina Plante ran away. Not abducted, not taken, not killed. She left. A 13-year-old girl walked out of her house on a Tuesday afternoon in May and chose completely, deliberately, with full intention to never come back. 32 years of searches, 32 years of databases and flyers and age-progressed images, 32 years of investigators who assumed the worst, who classified her disappearance as suspicious, who pulled her file out of cold storage over and over looking for the crime that never existed. And she was never lost. She just did not want to be found. Let that sit for a moment. She did not want to be found. Detective Garrett said it publicly, on record, to a journalist who asked him what she told him. He said, "I guess she was not happy with where she was living, or who she was living with, and she ran away." He said, "I was dumbfounded." And then he said, the thing that changes the entire shape of this story. He said, "I told her we were under the impression that somebody kidnapped you, that it was deemed a criminal offense." Think about what that means. A veteran cold case investigator sitting across from a 44-year-old woman telling her that the world spent 32 years believing she was a victim. That searches were conducted, that investigators periodically reopened her file, that her face was in national databases. Telling her all of that. And her response, the thing she said back to him, has not been made public. That silence, that unreleased response, is its own kind of mystery. She left with help. That is the detail that opens the deepest questions in this entire case. Christina did not disappear alone. She told investigators she left with assistance from relatives she had been in contact with at the time, relatives who knew, who helped a 13-year-old girl vanish so completely that 32 years of investigation never found her. Who were those relatives? Why did they help her go rather than help the people looking for her find her? What did they know about the situation Christina was leaving, about the home she was unhappy in, about whoever she was living with that made helping her disappear feel like the right thing to do? Those questions have no public answers. The sheriff's office has said out of respect for Christina's privacy and well-being that no further details will be released, which means the full truth of what Christina was running from in 1994 belongs entirely to her. And she has chosen, for now, to keep it. Here is the detail that lands heaviest of all. Detective Garrett said he does not believe there are immediate family members in the Star Valley area still searching for Christina. Not searching, not waiting. Which means that somewhere in the history of her disappearance, the people closest to her either knew she had left willingly, or they made their peace with not knowing. A 13-year-old girl, unhappy enough to vanish, helped by relatives who said nothing, and a family that eventually stopped searching. What does that tell us about what Christina was running from? The answer is not in any file. It is not in any press release. It is not in the 3 careful sentences the Gila County Sheriff's Office released on the 2nd of April, 2026. It lives only with Christina, who is 44 years old, who built a life somewhere in the world that nobody could find for 3 decades, who confirmed her identity to a detective and answered his questions and has said nothing publicly since. She survived. She built something. Whatever she was running from in 1994, she ran far enough and stayed gone long enough that it could not follow her. That is not nothing. That is actually, in the language of missing persons cases, extraordinarily rare. The Gila County Sheriff's Office credited cold case review initiatives and evolving technology for the breakthrough. The same tools that have been used to identify remains, to catch killers decades after their crimes, to put faces to Jane Does, who have been unidentified for years, were used here to find a woman who had simply, and with enormous determination, chosen to become unfindable. 32 years. Christina Plante was 13 years old when she left Star Valley. She is 44 years old now. She has lived more of her life away from that town than she ever lived inside it. The girl in the missing persons flyer, blue eyes, dark blonde hair, white t-shirt, multicolored shorts, black tennis shoes has been a woman for longer than she was ever a child. And somewhere in those 32 years, she became someone the world could not locate. Until a detective pulled a thread, and the thread led somewhere nobody expected. This case does something unusual to the people who follow missing persons stories. Because we are trained by years of these cases, by the pattern of how they end to brace for the worst, to prepare for the river, the woods, the answer that confirms what fear already knew. Christina Plante's answer was not that. She is alive. She is 44 years old. Whatever she built in the decades after she walked away from a horse stable road in Arizona and kept walking, she is there. Real, present, breathing. That is rarer than almost anything else in this space. But it leaves behind a question that I cannot stop turning over. What does it take for a 13-year-old girl to be unhappy enough, frightened enough, certain enough that leaving was the only option, to build an entirely new life from nothing and never look back for 32 years? That question does not point at a clear villain. It does not fit the shape of the stories we are used to telling. But it is the most human question this case leaves behind. And only Christina can answer it. Before you go, tell me something in the comments. Does knowing Christina chose to leave make this feel like a resolution to you, or does it open more questions than it closes? Does this case change how you think about the word missing? Because I think it should, and I want to know where you stand. Please subscribe to the Cold Case Signals. Ring that notification bell. Share this video. One share. One more person who sits with this story. We have more cases coming. More stories told the way they deserve, with depth, with truth, and with absolute respect for every person at the center of them. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.